Okay, let's unpack this. Today we're doing a deep dive into a really fascinating conversation you shared, all about the future of education.
That's right. Our source is an interview with Professor Chirabrata Majumdar from the Tea for Tales podcast. It really gets into how AI and tech might just, completely reshape
Yeah,
classrooms.
transform learning itself. So our mission here is to pull out the key insights. What are these changes? Like, why are they happening? And what does it all mean for learners, for you, and, well, the whole education system?
And what really jumps out from the source is just how big this shift could be. We're talking about moving away from the kind of school setup most of us probably remember.
Oh, absolutely. And the source paints such a vivid picture of that contrast.
Mhm.
You know, the classic chalk and talk classroom, one teacher, maybe 60 kids, everyone kind of getting the same thing at the same speed.
Right.
Now, picture maybe 20 years down the line, the ideal classroom they're describing.
Yeah.
Super interactive, really engaging almost, well, alive.
It's moving from just sitting and listening to actually like experiencing things. The example in the interview was great, I thought.
Which one was that?
Instead of just, reading Jawaharlal Nehru's Stroke of Midnight Hour speech, imagine actually being there, like technology putting you right in the constituent assembly. You could almost feel the moment.
Right. It's like the difference between looking at a photo of history and feeling if you're in it. And this is where things like AR and VR, augmented and virtual reality
Yeah.
become really game-changing tools.
Exactly. The source talks about seeing a civics concept not as some dry diagram on a page, but maybe like a movie you can actually step inside. It's just worlds apart from, say, clicking through a static slideshow.
Totally.
And this really connects to something Professor Majumdar mentioned, this idea that teaching, fundamentally, it's a kind of performance. You've got to make the material compelling to really engage people. Because, let's face it, just reading dense text, well, that doesn't automatically spark joy or feel like fun for everyone, does it? The delivery itself has to change to grab attention.
Okay, so if that's the kind of immersive vision, here's where it gets really interesting, I think. A huge driver for all this is artificial intelligence,
Yeah.
specifically enabling something called adaptive learning.
Adaptive learning. Yeah, the source explains this as basically tailoring the entire learning experience. So shaping the content, the speed, even the way it's taught directly to you, the individual student.
Matching your profile, how you learn best, your strengths, weaknesses, all of it.
Exactly, your whole way of processing information.
You're right.
And the reason it's so needed, well, students just aren't all the same, are they? Some people get concepts like that.
Right.
Others need more time, or maybe a different explanation, maybe something visual. And a single teacher with, say, 60 students, it's just incredibly hard to give that specific real-time feedback to everyone.
Yeah, impossible almost, like the example they used, A plus B2. Such a classic abstract math thing. The source points out how tricky that is for a lot of people.
Totally. And it highlights how often traditional math teaching might skip the visualization part, like literally drawing out the squares to show why A plus B2 equals A2 plus 2AB plus B2.
Which would make it so much clearer for some learners.
Right. And an adaptive learning system could see you're struggling with the abstract formula and just instantly offer that visual approach. Something a teacher might not even notice or just wouldn't have time to do for one specific student in that moment.
So how does this actually work? The interview gave some insight into how it could be powered, especially online.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like, imagine students using their phones in class, not for texting friends, but as a feedback tool. What if you could just tap your screen anonymously to say, hold on, I didn't get that last bit?
Ah, okay, so you collect that feedback.
Exactly. And as different students flag different points, the system gathers all that data. It starts seeing a pattern of where the tricky parts are, maybe for that specific group or even for individuals.
And that pattern finding, that's the machine learning part.
That's the core of it, yeah.
Yeah.
The AI learns where the struggles are happening.
And then the really powerful step is the AI uses that pattern, maybe even instantly, in real time, to change what the teacher or the system does next.
Precisely. So if half the class signals they're lost on a term, the AI might prompt the teacher, hey, maybe pause and explain that again. Or if it's an online course, the system could automatically show a different explanation or maybe a quick animation.
Right. And the source mentioned it might look different depending on the learner.
Yeah, for adults, maybe adjusting the spoken explanation is enough. But for younger kids, preschool, middle school, the source says they want to see. So the AI would trigger more visuals, animations, interactive bits.
Okay, so this kind of sophisticated, really personalized system, it clearly needs a massive infrastructure shift, right? Way beyond the typical chalk and talk world.
Oh, absolutely. Which leads to that big question.
How ready is everyone? Governments, policymakers, private companies. Are they actually set up for this kind of huge systemic change?
Well, the source points to India's National Education Policy 2020, the NET, as a pretty clear signal that, yes, the intention is there. Policymakers are thinking about this stuff.
But intentions are one thing.
Right. And the interview points out policy takes time to actually roll out. The changes from the 2020 NEP are only really starting to be felt widely now, like 5 years later.
Okay. And what are the key things the NEP is pushing for, according to the source, to enable this future?
It highlights two main areas. First, skilling. Getting educators and trainers updated, reskilled for these new approaches and technologies.
Makes sense. You need the people to drive it.
And second, just getting more technology implemented throughout the education system, really embedding it.
So beyond just the overall direction, are there specific, system changes happening now under NEP that the source mentions?
Yeah, some really fundamental stuff. A big one is the move towards a credit-based system that's apparently rolling out now at the university level.
A credit-based system.
Yeah.
So instead of just passing or failing a course, you earn points, kind of.
Sort of, yeah. You earn credits for the learning you actually demonstrate. And the source mentions this thing called the Academic Bank of Credit, the ABC. It's like a digital locker where you store these credits.
And you accumulate them over your whole education journey.
Potentially, yes. The idea is they build up. It's most structured right now in higher education, but the concept could start earlier. And it's linked to another idea, competency-based learning.
Okay, what's that?
It's about proving you've actually mastered a skill or a set of knowledge, often through doing stuff, through experience, not just, memorizing facts for a test.
And the big advantage of all this credit and competency stuff.
Flexibility seems to be the key takeaway from Professor Majumdar. This system lets you earn, say, microcredits in subjects outside your major. So an engineering student might take a few microcredits in astronomy.
Interesting.
And the idea is, even if they don't become an astronomer, that knowledge, those credits, they're banked. They might be useful later, open some unexpected door. It acknowledges that the world needs broader skills now.
Right, the old model of just sticking rigidly to one discipline. Maybe it's just outdated.
That's the underlying message, yeah. The old system isn't really cutting it anymore.
But here's something I found really unique in the source. Alongside all this future tech, the NEP is also deliberately looking back, drawing inspiration from India's ancient knowledge base.
Yes, Indian Knowledge Systems, or IKS. It's actually a mandatory part of the NEP now. The source describes it as looking at history not just for dates and facts, but for insights into teaching methods and, wisdom.
And they gave specific examples, right?
They did. Things like the Gurukul system, that very close teacher-disciple relationship, or the big ancient learning centers like Takshila and Nalanda.
Wow.
And even more recently, Rabindranath Tagore's Shantiniketan, with its focus on learning outdoors, connected to nature.
So different models of learning from the past.
Exactly. And also looking at specific knowledge areas like ancient Indian medical systems through figures like Sushruta and Charaka, or principles of good governance in Kautilya's Arthashastra, which the source described as almost like an ancient book of SOPs, standard operating procedures.
That's fascinating. And there was even a connection drawn to modern ideas.
Yeah, Professor Majumdar linked the emphasis on internal peace in some Indian traditions to the modern business focus on ESG environment, sustainability, governance, suggesting these old ideas still resonate.
It's kind of interesting, isn't it, how something like Shantiniketan's open air, maybe more visual or experiential learning, it sort of echoes the modern push for AR/VR visualization.
It does, in a way. Different eras, different tools, but maybe a similar understanding that learning needs to be more than just abstract text on a page.
Right, but of course, changing the whole system.
Yeah.
It really comes down to the people doing the teaching, the educators.
Absolutely, and the source is really clear on this. There's a huge need for continuous reskilling. Things like FDP's faculty development programs.
And it's not just about learning the latest software, is it?
No, the interview really stressed it's about the art of teaching. Understanding how people learn, the whole teaching learning process, focusing on outcomes, what students can actually do, not just ticking off syllabus points.
And one big outcome the system seems to be struggling with, according to the source, is getting students truly industry ready, making them employable, especially after undergraduate or postgraduate degrees.
Yeah, the source suggests a lot of graduates, maybe aren't quite there yet. which raises the question.
What are employers actually looking for beyond just the degree subject?
And the source points to those skills the World Economic Forum always highlights: critical thinking, good communication, empathy. Stuff you don't always get from just lectures.
So how do you improve that employability factor? What did the source suggest?
Practical experience. Things like simulations and internships are key. The interview even mentioned online micro-internships, giving platforms like Forage as an example, where you can do short, focused tasks for real companies. Get a taste of the work.
And why might students be lacking some of that critical thinking in the first place? Did Professor Majumdar have thoughts on that?
He attributed some of it to older habits, like rote learning, just memorizing without understanding, and also studying based purely on suggestions. Trying to guess what questions will be on the exam.
Which, let's be honest, is kind of a survival strategy if the main goal is just getting marks, right?
It is. It's a reality for students in that kind of system. But the source suggests the NEP is trying to tackle this partly by changing the actual style of assessment.
Yes, assessment. That's
Yeah.
definitely changing. The source said written exams aren't going away entirely.
No, the ability to write is still fundamental. Lekapora, writing, then reading, as the source puts it. But the format of exams is shifting quite a bit.
Like using more MCQs, multiple choice questions.
Exactly. Which might sound easier, but the source points out they often need really careful reading and understanding to get right. You can't just waffle.
Uh-huh. And what else?
More open book exams, too.
No.
Especially using case studies. Apparently, that's standard in management courses, but it's spreading. It tests if you can apply knowledge, analyze a situation, not just recall facts.
Okay, but when we talk technology and assessment, we have to talk about AI tools like ChatGPT.
Elephant in the room, yeah.
What's the challenge there, according to the source?
It's pretty straightforward, really.
Mhm.
Students can easily get answers from AI outside the exam hall, but they don't have it inside.
It creates a disconnect.
And there's also the risk of what the source called AI hallucination.
Hallucination.
Yeah, where the AI just confidently makes stuff up, gives wrong information. And the source made a good point. Just like students maybe used to trust textbooks without question, they might now blindly trust AI output without thinking critically or checking it.
That's a real danger.
Which highlights why this skill called prompt engineering is becoming so important.
Meaning how you ask the AI the question.
Exactly. Knowing how to phrase your input, how to refine your query to get something genuinely useful back. It's that old saying, garbage in, garbage out. And the source notes, professionals can often tell if an answer just sounds good but lacks real depth, maybe suggesting it's just a quick AI summary without real thought behind it.
So this leads to another interesting angle. Cheating. How does all this tech change how students try to cheat?
The source had a pretty pragmatic take on this. Basically, cheating is probably just human nature. It's not going to vanish. Students have always been creative, using whatever tech was available, whether it's writing on a water bottle or something more advanced now.
Not true.
But, and this is the flip side, technology can also be a really powerful tool to prevent cheating.
Oh, okay. How so?
Well, they gave examples. An adaptive learning system might notice if a student is answering super complex questions way too fast, faster than seems humanly possible. It could then automatically ramp up the difficulty or flag it for review.
Clever.
And for online exams, you can have proctoring software that locks down the student's browser, stops them copying and pasting, maybe even uses the webcam to monitor them, make sure they're not looking at their phone or getting help.
Right. So the tech creates new ways to cheat, but also new ways to catch it. It's like a constant back and forth.
Pretty much, yeah, an ongoing arms race.
So, okay, wrapping this up, what does this all mean? We've kind of journeyed from that old chalk-dusted classroom to this vision of immersive AI-driven learning, learning that's also trying to connect with ancient wisdom, navigate big policy changes, and totally rethink skills and how we measure them.
Yeah, the source really paints a picture of an education system in major flux, trying hard to adapt to what learners need now, what technology makes possible, but also, trying to hold on to some core principles.
It definitely leaves us with a big question, I think, something for you, the listener, to consider. As learning gets more visual, more adaptive, maybe even more simulated, and AI gets better at summarizing and feeding you exactly what you need, how do we make sure that we still build that muscle for deep reading, for critical thinking on our own, for putting complex ideas together ourselves, rather than just becoming really efficient consumers of perfectly tailored content?
That's a really important thought to end on as this future keeps unfolding.